Hey guys, sorry about whatever this is.
Got like a half screen going on here.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, and it just doesn't even weird. Oh, there we go. Can we ever do this without having some sort of a, you'd think that I was new to this or something, but I don't know. Sorry about that.
Yeah, hello all. Howdy, TJ. Good to have you.
Hey, yeah.
Mississippi.
Hey, well, how is everybody doing? It's cold. It's windy. We're supposed to get a snowstorm.
A little storm coming up for sure.
Is it snowing now when you came? I haven't looked outside for a while.
Just a little bit, but very windy.
Yeah, windy all night.
For sure.
How's the weather where you guys are, everybody? Well, I'm sure Cheryl
How about
is.
Marquette? Yeah, how's it going to Marquette right now?
She's laughing at us, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Saying if you want cold, come here.
Yeah, come on, check it out.
Real winter. All right, well, we're going to jump into it today.
Yeah, we might as well, right?
We only have a half hour because you're out of here.
Yeah,
here we are complaining.
I know. I got to get in a plane in a couple
cold
hours.
Weather, and you're going to warm weather.
I hear it's like 80 degrees in Dallas.
Pack me in your bag.
That's right. Looks like Mississippi, it's 85 Thursday, it sounds like. So.
Well, I say that. I lived in Florida for like 6 months, lived there through the summer.
Right.
Now when I'm down there in the winter for stuff, and I'm tempted, like, boy, this would be really nice. I remember, like, no, thank you. I wouldn't want to be down here. So you guys can have it. Yeah. And we know that Rich it's 72 inside where Rich is because in Michigan, too.
57 degrees there, I believe, in Arizona.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yep, Tucson. Tucson. I think it's how.
Yeah. So, well, good stuff. That's cold for there, I would think
so,
man.
Too.
Yeah. You guys wearing the winter coat.
Here we are talking about weather. How does that work out, right?
I don't know. Let's dive into it.
That's right.
We are not living what we're supposed to. We're not, right? We're going to talk about being focused
and
today.
we're not
focused.
Yeah, so we are in Resilient Friends, chapter 10. If you get your book around or if you've dove in that, we're going to be investing some time here. I think we're going to be in chapter 10 for some time.
Yeah, there's so much here.
There's a lot.
We touched it last month when we were just kind of like,
just
hey,
a little
we're back.
bit. Yep.
But really want to dive into it. And so we want your input as usual, as always, right? Give us your input. Let us know what you're thinking about. We'll try to, if we put something out there, we'll try to sit for a minute. But this one especially, we're really trying to keep to a half hour. Scott's got to get out of here. So if you say, I was going to make a comment, but they passed it, we'll come back.
Yeah, put the comments in there.
Put a comment in there.
For sure.
Because I think they're 30 seconds or a minute behind real time anyways.
Right.
For us.
Yeah. Look, we just said that. Now they're going to hear it a little bit later. So, jump in. Grab your book if you want to. We're going to be here for a while, a couple months probably. But talking about when in the world, Scott, does NASA have to do with child discipleship? I think, remember, it seems like forever ago we talked about landing on the moon or something. Yeah.
Well, this is a little different, I think.
A little bit, but there's similarities, certainly, because it's the idea of, wow, that seems so far away.
Yeah.
And when we talk about 2050, right? Just like the moon.
And daunting, right? Like almost impossible to even think about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the things that need to be accomplished to prepare to get to that place.
Right.
Right. And I think some of those similarities, and we talked about that before. So, what is Mars? How do we live? How do we live and thrive on Mars?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
Mars,
I think what it was.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And how do we actually, prepare to do that? And I think what we're going to talk a lot about today is the focus. Right.
So before we do that, let's remind everybody, because we're assuming everybody knows what we're talking about, but maybe somebody doesn't. Why is 2050 so important to us?
Well, 2050 is like looking into the future and saying, what is 2050, the culture of 2050 going to look like?
Right. So 30-ish, it's a little less than now, but 30-ish years from now.
And it's important because today, the kids in our ministry that are in our children's ministries today, from 0 to 13, and, Barna says that's the age in which, predominantly the worldview is rooted in that time frame.
When we have them now.
Yeah, from now to the age of 13, very little change about who God is or who they are or who the world is happens after the age of 13.
Right.
So this is a time of investment
because we need to be preparing them for the world they're going to live in. Exactly.
And that world's going to be, we clearly, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
when this book was written pre
a different world.
Well, I'm not going to say it because YouTube doesn't like that word, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Pre-masculine, let's say that, right?
Pre-masculine.
Nobody would have thought. I heard several people say, like, man, we didn't even know when we wrote this book. Well, now you think about, we still just cannot imagine what life is going to look like for our kids in 20, 30 years. So then the question is, what is life going to look like for the church? I think that's the bigger question. We were talking about that before we went live. That's where I think we're going to take some of the thrust of our conversation today.
Yeah, and you think about, 2019 when this really came out in early 2020, different world. Right. We couldn't have imagined where we're at today.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do we really try to imagine what 2050 is going to look like? And then it's daunting, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I think it's very important for us to, recognize where we've come from, but then also know where we're going and what do we need to do to get to that place. And that's all about this first chapter.
Yeah.
The first part of chapter 10 here, talking about, how do we get there? Well, first off, it's coming together in a central laser-like focus as to what's important, what needs to be done.
Well, so let's take them to chapter 10, Scott. Chapter 10, really the idea as it starts out is NASA, when it was founded, it kind of struggled.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They didn't
teetered.
They weren't finding their way.
Yeah, they had like 10, 11 different kind of objectives they wanted to accomplish.
So my thinking in that is, how many, as you guys are watching, how many would you look at your church and kind of characterize your church that way, right? We're going in all these directions,
right?
But I don't know that we're accomplishing anything,
right?
And maybe it's not yours, but we all know at least a church, if not more churches, that just overall, not even just the kids program, but overall, right? We've got all these things going on.
Yeah.
But are we really accomplishing anything? And a lot of people might even say that they're not. Maybe they're not even growing.
Yeah.
And there's just it's busy and it looks good.
It's something that we've always done, right? And oftentimes, like in kids ministry, it's like you're putting a blinder on your face. And you got a dart, and you're trying to hit the dartboard, but you don't even know the direction. So it's like, VBS.
We do know
all
the
these
direction.
different things.
We do know what's the direction. Let's see how many kids we can get in the seats.
Yeah, numbers, right. Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing, but if that's all we're doing.
There's a book in the Bible on that topic. Numbers. So, but yeah, no, exactly. And so NASA was in that place where they were doing this, right? They're kind of really disorganized, dysfunctional when they first started in 1958, and they didn't really have a theme or a direction. They had some objectives they wanted to try to accomplish, but they're kind of wishy-washy, And I think if we're to think about the church today, even in the kids' world, I think we're coming out of that actually with the thing that we just went through.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to say it, the mask thing, right? I think that in some ways
it started to force churches to look at what's important.
Yeah.
Right? How are we going to function, and what do we need? What do we don't need?
So in some ways that was healthy to get us to a place where we've got to hone in.
Right.
Right.
I talked to a lot of pastors that were reevaluating their ministry.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
So we just came off President's Day yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? We homeschool, so Amy was teaching my kids all about President's Day, and John F. Kennedy changed NASA. How did he do that?
Yeah, he stepped in and he gave quite the charge, right?
Yeah.
That whole, we're going to do this. We're going to go to the moon, right? In this decade.
How does that happen?
At the time, they had no clue.
Right.
Right? But they were given a focus, something a goal to go after.
Three things: propulsion,
they
navigation.
need to figure these things out.
I'm looking life support,
right? Exactly. Yeah, and so
in
1961,
how you get there.
Yeah, Kennedy said we're going to do this,
right?
And we're going to do that other thing, even, So it's like, okay, well now we've got to accomplish these things, and so they had a team. They had multiple teams on propulsion, on navigation, on life support. These are the things that we have to accomplish to get to that daunting thing, which is called the moon.
They ditched all the other stuff.
They ditched all the extra stuff.
Anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right. Yeah.
And now look at where NASA is. NASA's really found it. It's taken off now.
Certainly.
For
and
sure.
now there's the Mars is still kind of from one administration to the next. It's right, but it's a focus. And so what do they got accomplished to to get to Mars, and so like NASA was laser at that time, was laser focused on a goal. And what is our goal today?
Well, let me jump in here for a minute, because I don't think NASA would have changed or would have been what it is today if it wasn't for Kennedy, right?
For sure.
For his leadership and saying, all right, we got to, this is where we're going and this is what we've got to focus on. So a couple things come to mind. Number one, let's go back. We've said this, we haven't said it for a while, but we went back a long time ago and we used to really reiterate who we're doing this show for, or this podcast for.
Right.
We're doing it for who? We're doing it for
parents, right?
Right. Leaders.
Ministry leaders.
And pastors.
Exactly.
So right now, let's talk to pastors.
Certainly.
Right? Because that's where you need that head of the church.
Yeah, the vision.
Let's get the vision, right? Yeah. This is on me.
All right, so pastor, right? You're President Kennedy in your church, right? Where do you want to go with your ministry? What is when you hone it all into what your purpose is, and what is the purpose of the church?
Oh man,
here we go, Pastor.
We're just a couple minutes in, and you're already teeing me up, Scott.
Oh man, so that is exactly.
Yeah. Well, so that's
what is the goal?
That's where we've been, right? We've been looking at ministries and saying, does it fit our goal? And I believe clearly that God has designed the church to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry and to build up the body of Christ. So the work of the ministry is, if you study that out, I really believe Paul means right there, he's talking about taking the gospel to the unsaved.
Sure.
We can get into that later. If anybody wants to know why that, talk to me later. But also building up the body of Christ, that's discipleship. So our job as we gather, our why as Christians is to make disciples, right? Child discipleship, make disciples. That's our why. So as we gather as a church, then it's equipping for that. We need to be thinking about, so we're talking about 2050, right? We're talking about resilient disciples in 2050. We also have to think about then, if we have resilient disciples, we need resilient churches.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And there's so much that falls into that. One of those being I keep hearing, well, we have less and less pastors. We have less and less pastors. Okay, well, if we're going to make resilient disciples in 2050, we need to have resilient churches who are led by resilient pastors. Yeah. Where are we going to get those pastors from, Scott?
Well, from the church.
From the church.
And from doing what the church should be doing.
Right. So if we start to focus on what we're supposed to be doing, this comes from personal, like this is where we are as a church. So we've been pursuing this for around 7 years now. And God keeps bringing us like, okay, here's what I want you to work on. Here's what and as one of the things we have been working on now is training leaders.
Right.
I have a goal, okay, for our church to be resilient in 2050. I believe the Bible teaches, and this could be controversial to some people, but I'll defend it from Scripture. I believe the Bible teaches that best case scenario, pastors should come from your church. My goal is that in our church in 2050, we don't have a search committee or a pulpit committee, but in 2050, we're just stocking from pastors that we've raised up and trained. That's going to help keep our church resilient. The churches are most vulnerable in that time they don't have a pastor, right? So let's just train them, okay? I know this seems like a long thing, but what am I getting to? I'm getting to where are those pastors right now that are going to be the pastors of this church in 2050? Where is that pastor, if I believe that?
In your kids' ministry.
In my Awana club, in my Sunday school class,
exactly.
In my junior church.
For sure.
So wouldn't that change, as now I'm the leader, wouldn't that change how I lead the church?
For sure.
How I lead these ministries, how I start directing and casting vision for our leaders.
Right. And that distant future may seem like the moon to John F. Kemp,
I'm
right?
telling you, right now, I'm like, I don't know where we're just starting by faith, right? We're just trying to get there. And we don't, I'm learning as I go.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and this chapter is going to move into that place, and we, probably don't have the time to necessarily, touch on that here, into what a model for producing the resilient disciple, producing the child today that will be resilient tomorrow, is the belong, believe, become.
Right.
And we'll talk more
Those
about
are our
that.
three, right?
Yeah.
Those are our three things, like NASA. So we've
got them.
When we look at 20 and how as daunting that is, doesn't that mean we have just really got to be focused?
Got to be laser focused. And I kind of want to come back to your training piece, because I feel like in churches, there's this idea of, okay, we're going to fall into the things that we do. We're working with volunteers, so we can't have, we're not paying people to come and to get training and to be ready so we kind of, in some ways, are selling our leaders short by not giving them the adequate training to prepare them for this very specific job that they have, which is called discipling children, right? And building, belonging, believing, those components within the ministry. Training is important.
Absolutely.
Giving them tools to be successful in
this. There should be a burning desire from your leaders if they truly buy in and say, this is so vital. Please train me.
Right.
Please train me.
What does it look like to disciple a child? I mean, let's throw that out there. What are some things that when you think about discipling a child, what are some important aspects? Like, what are some key things that we need to do, and how can we change the mindset?
So again, this is where we're working on, right? Because we've put this big focus on training leaders in our church, and then kind of the next side of that was, okay, well, we're getting this going. What we find is we kind of start working on this area where God convicts us, and as we get that going, then we can start working on another area, and another area is saying, hey, if we've got to be laser focused, let's be laser focused on Christian education, Sunday school, whatever you want to call it, not just the kids, the adults, everybody, right? So that's kind of been where we've thought about. Well, then what we just talked about really impacted me as I realized, like, okay, these guys that I'm right now teaching and training, some of them might be pastors, but they're, maybe we have a youth pastor out of that's here, but if God's will is what I think God's will is, I'm going to be here for a long time. So the reality is probably within this group of leaders that we're raising up, we're praying to maybe go plant a church with one of them.
Right.
So again, reality being that the kids that are coming up, that hits like, oh, this is like our AAA, our AA, our, right, that's our farm club. So I've got to have my teachers with that focus, realizing that when they come into Awana on Wednesday night and they're working through the book and they're teaching them, Scott, you might be actually teaching your next pastor.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, that now it's your responsibility to make sure you teach them and disciple them well. Okay. So that's number one. And number two, who biblically is the ultimate discipler of those children?
Right.
It's the parents. It's not the church.
Right.
Why do we disciple kids as a church? Because their parents aren't, and because we have so many community kids that their parents aren't even saved. So we have to do it. But ultimately, what should we also be doing? We need to be training leaders, but we need to be intentionally training parents.
Yep. And giving them the tools.
Right. And then we need to look at, now we're digging deep, but this is where we are. We're looking at our youth group, our kids ministries, and saying, where does all this fit? Where do we have the families? You look at Scripture, there is not and I'm not saying it's wrong. I believe it's good to have, like, my kids learn at a different level than an adult does. And it's really good to have adults pouring into them at that level. But do we do that too much so that they're not in the church, so they're not belonging the way that they should? Have we segregated the kids so much that we don't embrace this family discipleship?
Generational.
They're not. Now they grad. Part of the reason we lose kids is they graduate from high school and they've never actually belonged.
Right.
And part of that belonging is not just a loving, caring adult, but it's also serving and being a part of a community.
The ministry. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Right. So, but the point being is now we got to start saying, okay, this gets in the way, this gets in the way, this slows us down.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to start. They might all be good things, but we got to start.
Again, getting laser focused.
And we got to be willing to kill some sacred cows.
Right.
Because Sunday school has been Sunday school for years. Right? Awana has been Awana for years.
Right. And making those adjustments to Sunday school or to Awana, like we've talked a lot about. Awana's shifted quite a bit in the mentality or the focus as it relates to not just, biblical memorization, but now really trying to engage the heart in a discipleship environment. That's, trying to adjust the culture in the ministry to fit the needs of today and the focus that, is certainly needed for the future for 2050. So
where do we start, Scott? I'm cheating. I'm pulling us to page 165 here, but where do we start? Because it is daunting, right?
Yeah, it really is. Well, I mean, you're talking about, you mentioned parents and training parents, and I'm going to give a plug here. Can I do that? I mean,
go for it.
All right. So we have Talk About, right?
Yes.
Within Awana, and it's an incredible tool for parents to do discipleship at their home, at the dinner table, on their way to the sporting event, right?
Yep.
And we have to start somewhere.
Right. So here's where we start. This is where I'm
okay.
interrupting you for a minute, and then I'm going to turn you loose again. Well, what are the famous words? One small step for man,
one giant leap for mankind.
We've got to take little steps.
Yep. Exactly.
We've got to take little steps. We've got to start somewhere because it is overwhelming. So like you said, the parents have to start somewhere.
Right.
So keep going.
Yeah, and we're talking.
You just said
so
that,
we talk
right?
pastors right now, talking to parents.
Yeah.
What do I do as a parent? I mean, I'm living in a world. I mean, let's be honest about, as a parent, where we're at in today's culture with kids, right? Sports, I mean, you just add up all the things, and then you have parents that are working. Both parents are working, right? So they get done with their day of work, and they get the kids home, and they're like, right? I don't want to. Oh, that's right. I got to go take Johnny. And you start, looking at a honest assessment of where your time is at, and the time that you have, it's very small. Where do we start, right?
And that's why laser focus in the home too. I mean, I would say that's one of the things I struggle with, and I'm working at, actually wanting to talk about and finding a place where I can carve out some time.
And it's not like this rocket, like sit down for 2 hours with your kids. That's not what we're talking about here. Just conversational discipleship.
Right. Well, the great thing about, I think, what Talk About is if you can sit down for just a few minutes.
Yes.
Like we're thinking,
for sure.
like I'll go home for lunch one day, and we'll just kind of take a few minutes, and then for the rest of the week, we'll keep coming back to that.
That place. Keep bringing that up, and that's the whole point. And that's That's discipleship, right? That's what we got to be doing. But I think oftentimes we kind of fall into it, and we kind of think we know we're supposed to be doing something, and sometimes it's like, okay, I've got to have this big devotional with my kids.
No.
And so we kind of feel that way, right? We probably feel that way. So then we don't, that kind of like gets us anxious and like, I don't know how to do that. Where do I start? Got to start somewhere.
Instead
right?
of following
and then that
Deuteronomy
shuts you off.
That says, well, we talk about it when we get up, when we lay down, when we go about our lives.
Talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not that we have to have this, what maybe we call a family altar, right? When I grew up, that was kind of the thing. Is like, not that that's wrong, but that can be overwhelming. And I don't even know that that's always the best.
Right.
But let's just because that almost never makes it a part of the fabric of their lives.
Right. It becomes this like separate thing.
Right.
Just like sometimes churches.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So if any way you can mold that into the network of your family, the thing
when
that you do.
Pick them up from that game. How did that go? How were you able to talk to Johnny about Christ, or were you able
exactly.
to, how did it, when you got benched for that, how did you work through that? Here's how we probably should work through that, or whatever, but constantly taking them back to biblical.
And so parents, don't get discouraged by the fact that I'm not doing anything and think you have to do this, this event in your home. No, don't allow that to, be the excuse. Cause I think for a lot of us, we feel the weight as parents to do something. And what we end up doing is doing nothing because we think it's what we need to be doing is so far out there.
And I think I heard a quote this week about prayer, and they said, and it's simple, but if you're too busy to pray, you're too busy. And if we believe disciple making is our true why, if you're too busy to disciple,
right,
you're too busy.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to, whether that's your church, your personal life, whatever,
you name it,
we need to start.
Exactly. You got to start somewhere, laser focused. And so I hope this conversation for you today, wherever you're at, whoever you are, helps you just begin to think about, okay, what are the things that I should be doing or could be doing today? What should I be focused on to prepare these, future leaders of the church?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about your pastor, the pastor of this church, in Howard City in 2050, who's that going to be, right? And, if you're a ministry leader, right, you're a Cubby or a TNT or a Sunday school teacher, right? How can you better prepare these kids for that future? TJ put something up there. Got a couple of things here. Yeah, this is great. Thanks for the conversation. We've also wanted to really have this be a conversation, right? We're here connecting with you, engaging with you, and love your input and feedback.
Sorry, we're just reading this.
You're fine.
So
James said, you're right. Serving and being part of the ministry of local church is so important. It truly is. And I think we've kind of stepped away from that. Church is this other thing that we do. It should be, who we are and what we do, more of the community sense. And that's really how it's designed. We're a family, right?
Well, I love this. I think really what TJ is saying here partly is just, again, finding the time. Like it didn't work, or his son wasn't coming at the time that they were going to do it. So they had breakfast and they did it then,
Yeah.
and I think that's key, and not being discouraged either.
And I'll be honest.
They don't want to come when you want to come, or when you want to do it, but just finding those times. I was talking to one of our youth leaders. This was a while ago, and it's neat now because now this kid is really grown in the Lord. But he was trying to disciple him, trying to get together with him, and he said, "Pastor, the problem is if I call him and I say, hey, you want to come over and shoot some hoops, he'll come right over.
Right.
If I say you want to come over and study the Bible, he won't come over.
Mm.
What do I do? I said,
right.
You call him and invite him over to shoot hoops. And while you're shooting hoops, you just talk about life. You talk about Scripture.
Yeah.
And eventually the Lord will begin to work in his heart.
Right. Yeah.
But again, do what you can do. Just do the little.
Right.
Be with them.
Right.
Spend time with them.
And I think
great. If do what you can with your kids and then spend time with them.
And I think we'd be surprised too as parents. Our kids are hungry for this stuff. And I'll share with you. The other day, my daughter Dallas, she's like, "Hey, Dad, we haven't done talk about in a couple of weeks." And we do it at the dinner table. We have several nights of the week. We really try to focus in on, okay, we're going to have dinner at the table, and we're doing really well with that actually. And that's been an incredible time of engagement and discipleship really at the end of the day. And she's like, "Dad, we haven't done talk about," right? So there's a hunger that they even have. They want that. They want to be fed.
Right.
And so I think, we need to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that. My daughter's 9, she'll be 10. Right now we've already had her theoretically for half of her life. What have I accomplished in her life in this first half of her life that I'm going to have her under my roof?
Right. Right.
Same with our kids in our church.
Yep.
We just have to be so intentional. Tons and tons to talk about. Hey, we're up against it here already.
We're that time.
So here's what we're going to say is our goal is we kind of said, hey, how long do you want us to go? We asked people, is a half hour better, is 45 minutes, whatever, we can talk all day.
Oh, for sure.
But we realized you guys you have specific schedules. So we've tried a half hour. We have gotten some feedback that this is pretty short, and I would agree.
Yeah.
So probably 45 minutes.
Like by the time we get into it, it's like, wow, we got to land it already.
So, but today we knew you've got to get out of here. So do you want to say what's going on here real quick?
I'm heading to Dallas, Texas, going to Dallas Baptist University. And within Awana, we're trying to also find the future missionaries on the field.
Oh, right.
And the future, people to do what I'm doing and talking about child discipleship and casting vision for the church with that. And so we're going to a career fair down there, a job fair kind of thing at the school, and just kind of throwing out there, hey, would anybody be interested in what we do? And I love what I get to do, talking with pastors, doing things like this. And so, if anybody out there has somebody that might be interested, we are certainly looking.
Like, do you even?
I love it. Yeah, exactly. I get to do this, right? And TJ, you're on there. You know exactly what we're talking about. We get to do this. It's incredible to be able to, to stop into a church and talk with them about child discipleship and talk about these things. 2050. What does that look like? How are we doing? And try to encourage churches to be effective in discipling the future leaders of the church. So important. We've got to give them that spine and heart.
Yes.
That spine and heart. The spine to stand, God's word, stand for the Lord in their world, but then also love that world that's going to be largely against them. 2050. Yeah. I mean, let's think about it, right? We think we're being persecuted today. 2050. Wow.
Yep.
And so there's going to be a remnant that I believe will need what we're doing today to prepare them for that future.
Yep.
I want to just read this on 167. In children's ministry, the year 2050 almost feels as distant as the moon. We've talked about that. But the culture race is on, big time. Secular culture is designed to distract our kids into corrupt ideology or lull them into consumer complacency. And wow, is that true?
Yeah.
Our culture is very laser focused, right?
Oh yeah.
Think about this. If you're listening today, do you believe that our culture is laser focused, trying to distract and discourage and get the hearts and minds of our kids?
Absolutely. There's
absolutely
no doubt
about it. They're purposeful. What's going on in the schools, in our culture, on every single episode of on Netflix.
Yep.
It's they are
right.
They know what they're doing.
Right. Talk to Disney and just take your head out if you don't know what's going on at Disney.
They know what they're doing, and we cannot be complacent about it.
Right.
We've got to be as, if not more, laser focused in the job that we have to do to prepare these kids.
Eternal stakes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks for watching. We're going to get out of here. But hey, I would encourage you as well. First of all, pray for Scott as he's in Dallas with some other
24-hour trip.
People. Yeah,
I'm actually going to be driving back tomorrow at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock when I fly into Grand Rapids again. And I hear there's a snowstorm coming. So
pray for that to
that.
go well, but safety on the trip. And then I just encourage you to share this with pastors or WANA leaders, whatever. Let them know what we're trying to do, and if there's somebody that can be encouraged by this conversation and the other conversations we have.
For sure.
Let them know. And if you're new, I don't think we have anybody new, but if you watch this later and you're new, there's a playlist on my YouTube channel. You can get all of these if you want to catch up.
That's a great place to go and just to there's a lot
it's
there.
Longer. It's podcast form, but come on, listen to them.
For sure. Good stuff.
All right, thanks, and we will see you next month.
All right. Until next time, go make resilient disciples.
That's right.
Goodbye.
Needs to be our new thing.
That's right.